Do you want to be a great podcast guest and get invited back? Being a great podcast guest is serving the host and their audience by helping them understand your unique topic. There are 5 key ways to provide the show with the best content. First, you're going to research the podcast. If you are pitching your idea to a podcast, you want to make sure you're pitching to a podcast that actually does interviews. If it's a solo podcast and they don't do interviews, don't take your idea to them. Take it to a podcast that does interviews. And then you're going to want to research, who are they? What are they looking for? What kind of topics do they talk about on their podcast? You're also going to really want to look at who their audience is. Who are the people that they're reaching in their podcast? Then I want to challenge you to go and listen to at least a couple of episodes. What you want to do is to listen to the episode to see if their content is something that you're going to be able to speak into. If what they're talking about to their audience, if your topic helps that audience. You're also going to want to listen for the flow. What is the flow of the podcast? How do they go from one topic to another? Do they do multiple interviews in one podcast? Listen to the flow, see what they're about and how they're reaching their audience. And then once you're invited on the show, you're going to want to make sure that you understand how long that interview is going to be. If you go back and listen to episodes, time, how long does it take for an interview? Not the entire show from beginning to end, but how long do you have for an interview? Because you want to serve this podcast host and their audience the best you can by understanding everything you can about that podcast. Number 2, remember, the podcast is about the host or hosts and their audience. You may have a great message, but you need to speak directly to that audience that you've researched. Who is it that they're trying to reach in their podcast? If you're on a podcast that talks to business leaders, you're going to want to tweak your message, the message that you have in your product, in your book, in your whatever it is you're offering toward business leaders. If you're on a podcast that's for dads, you want to speak into the life of the dads. If it is a podcast for women entrepreneurs, you want to speak into that women entrepreneurial language. You want to speak to the exact audience. You want to best serve, and I said this before, best serve the hosts and their audience. So remember, it's about them. Yes, you have a unique message. Your message matters. It's important, but you have to remember that you're walking into their living room. You're walking into their space. You're walking into their home, and you want to serve them as best you can as a guest on their podcast. Number 3, if the podcast gives you guidelines, follow the guidelines. Follow them. Again, remembering it's their podcast. There are some podcasts that will send you a list of questions that you need to read, you need to answer, you need to send back to them. Some podcasts are very formulated. They want to go exactly to a script. I've had podcasts send me their script for their podcast, and it goes exactly that way. There's not a whole lot of room to add and subtract to those interviews. So you want to be able to understand the guidelines that they're giving you. I've also been on podcasts where it is just a flow. They ask a question and then they ask questions off of that. It's more like a conversation. If you're sitting in a living room and you've met someone for the first time and they ask you what you do and you start talking about it, and then they hear something and they ask you another question, and then they ask you another question and another question off of all the things that you're saying. And those podcasts are great too. So those give you a little more room to add and subtract to what you may be talking about. If you're presenting a product, if you're presenting a book, if you're presenting a unique niche that you have to remember it has to follow the guidelines of those podcasts. I've had podcasts that insert ads during the time that you're being interviewed. So they will tell you at the beginning, when I give a hand up, if they're not videoing it, if they're just on video with audio, or sometimes they're videoing, they'll give you a hand signal, and you know it's coming within 30 seconds of the end of that part of their podcast so that they can pause and insert an ad later. So you want to make sure that you're following those guidelines, and just because you have something else to say, you want to say it and you're going to get it in there, you just can't do that. Their guidelines are very patterned, very put in place for them to be able to make the best product they can make. So if they give you guidelines, make sure you follow them. Number 4, answer questions quickly and succinctly. This goes into the guidelines again. When we talk about a timeline of a podcast, there are many podcasts that decide they're only going to have enough audio for about 20 to 25 minutes. It's really short when you get to talking. So you have to make sure that when they ask you a question, that you're not taking over the podcast and just going into a dissertation of ideas and information. You really want to try very hard to answer those questions quickly and succinctly. That's a hard word, succinctly. Be respectful of the time of the host, understanding their audience, how much time they need for interviews. It goes back again to doing that research ahead of time to make sure you understand exactly how that flow goes. You understand if they take pauses between the beginning of the interview and the middle and the end, or if it's just a complete straight through interview. You understand that. You want to make sure that you're continuing to follow the guidelines. All of these 5 tips sort of overlay on each other. We want to make sure we're respecting the host and their audience. And that is in number 4, answering the questions that are asked quickly and succinctly so that you're staying in the time frame that they've given you. Number 5. Only give information about following you or your lead magnet or any other offers when the host asks. When you go on someone's podcast and you have an offer, a lead magnet, something that you want to sell, a course, whatever, a book, whatever it may be, make sure you're respectful of that podcast host. If there is an exact place in their podcast, usually at the end, and a lot of podcast hosts will inform you before the podcast interview starts as to when they're going to say to you, hey, how can people find you? Can you give us your website? Are you on social media? Do you have anything else for the audience? That is where you want to do it. Listen to the podcast host, respecting the time of their podcast and the timeline of when they want you to present that offer. What you don't want to do is to go against, again, their guidelines, their timeline. You want to make sure that your offer is a gift. It is a gift given at the end or whenever it is that they ask you to present that during the podcast interview. It's a gift to their audience. Their audience has stuck around this long to listen to you, give them information, and that gift of an offer toward the end is where you want to make sure that you are respectful to the podcast host's podcast timeline. So we're going to go back over the 5 tips that I'm giving you. The 5 key ways to provide the show with the best content. Number 1, research the podcast. Number 2, remember the podcast is about the host or hosts and their audience. Number 3, if the podcast gives you guidelines to follow, follow them. Number 4, answer the questions asked quickly and succinctly. And number 5, only give information about following you or your lead magnet or offer or course, whatever that is, when the hosts ask. Now, I have one more bonus tip for you. If you have the pleasure and honor to be on someone's podcast, I really believe it speaks volumes to them when you send a thank you. This is usually when you're going to get asked back on the show when you have another offer. So after a podcast interview, whoever that contact is, make sure, because sometimes it's not the host. Sometimes they have a personal assistant or a virtual assistant. Make sure you send a thank you to the virtual assistant, but also add a small tidbit underneath asking, could you please forward this message to your podcast host? Name them, name their podcast, thank them for being on the show. Second bonus, after you're on the show and they send you the information of your show airing, make sure you share it with your audience. Many, many times people fall through on this step. They get out there, they get all the interviews they can get. They do what they can to be on someone's show. They may even thank them for being on the show, but then you sort of forget to follow up. Because usually when you're on a podcast, it isn't aired immediately. It's aired in the future. Usually you will get an email saying, hey, this is when it's airing. We'd love for you to share. Sometimes they give you graphics to share. Sometimes they don't send an email. And it's just a social media link that they hand to you on social media, in your DM. They tag you on a social media post. Make sure you share that to your stories. Celebrate that podcast. Celebrate that host by saying, thank you so much. What an honor it is to be on your podcast. You guys are so wonderful to work with. I just loved every minute of it. Whatever you can do to be their biggest cheerleader is what is going to make you a great podcast guest and get you invited back.